Graduation night was supposed to be the perfect ending to our high school years. It was the night we had been waiting for, a moment we had worked toward for years. The speeches were delivered, the caps were thrown, and families gathered for endless photos. The air was filled with laughter, excitement, and the bittersweet realization that things were about to change forever. But none of us knew that the night would end in a way we could never have imagined. It started when a group of us, Daniel, Sarah, Lucas, and I, decided that the night was far from over. The thought of simply going home after graduation felt underwhelming, so we began tossing around ideas for what to do next. A party was the obvious choice, but the usual spots were crowded, and we wanted something different. That's when someone brought up the old science building. The school had abandoned it years ago after a fire-damaged part of the structure. The rumors surrounding it had turned it into a legend among students. Some said it was haunted, others claimed that a student had disappeared there long ago, and a few even believed that the school had covered something up. The idea of exploring it seemed ridiculous at first, but after a few minutes of discussion, we had convinced ourselves it would be fun. It was just an old building after all. The entrance was easy to access. The chain that once secured the doors had been broken long ago, and all we had to do was push the heavy wooden doors open. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of dust and decay. The hallway stretched into darkness, illuminated only by the dim glow of our phone flashlights. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and the lockers, long abandoned, stood like silent sentinels along the corridor. We moved cautiously, stepping over debris and broken tiles. The place had been empty for years, but it still carried an eerie presence. Every sound echoed through the empty halls, making even the smallest noise feel unnaturally loud. It was unsettling, but we kept going, laughing off the nervous energy that was building inside all of us. After a few minutes of walking, we reached a stairwell leading to the second floor. That's when we heard it. A noise that didn't belong to any of us. It was faint at first, a soft creaking sound like footsteps on old wooden planks. We froze, glancing at each other to confirm that we had all heard the same thing. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the sound stopped. Daniel, always the fearless one, took the lead. "Probably just the building settling," he said, his voice steady but forced. None of us believed it, but no one wanted to be the first to suggest turning back. We had come this far, and we weren't about to chicken out now. We climbed the stairs, our footsteps slow and deliberate. The second floor was worse than the first. The damage from the fire was more visible here. Charred walls, collapsed sections of the ceiling, and scorch marks staining the floor. The air was thick with the scent of burnt wood, a stark reminder of the building's history. We moved through the hallway, peering into classrooms as we passed. Most were empty, their contents either removed or destroyed. Desks were overturned, chairs broken, and textbooks left behind were faded and unreadable. But one room stood out. The door was slightly ajar, and inside there was something that made us stop. A single desk sat in the center of the room, untouched by time or fire damage. On the desk was a yearbook, open to a page that should have been blank. Instead, it contained a list of names of students who had graduated in previous years. Some of them were familiar, others not. But the strangest part was that Daniel's name was there. His face paled as he stepped closer. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "This is from years ago." We leaned in, studying the page. The names looked as if they had been handwritten in ink that had dried long ago. The last name on the list had been scribbled hastily, almost as if someone had written it in a hurry. But it wasn't just the list that unnerved us. It was the fact that one of the names, the one just above Daniel's, was completely crossed out. An uneasy feeling settled over the group. Lucas turned toward the doorway. "Maybe we should go," he suggested, his voice quieter than before. No one argued. We turned to leave, but Daniel hesitated for a moment longer, staring at the yearbook, as if he were trying to make sense of it. Then, without another word, he closed it and walked toward the door. We left the room, our movements quicker than before, our unease growing with every step. That's when Daniel disappeared. 1 second, he was right behind us. The next, he was gone. We spun around, expecting to see him standing in the hallway, maybe lagging behind or trying to scare us. But he wasn't there. The hallway stretched into darkness, silent and empty. Panic set in almost immediately. We called his name, our voices echoing in the stillness. No response. We retraced our steps, checking every room we had passed. Nothing. There was no sign of him, no indication of where he had gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Lucas pulled out his phone, his hands shaking as he tried to call Daniel. No signal. Sarah's breathing grew rapid. "This isn't right," she whispered. "People don't just disappear like that." We stood there, paralyzed by fear, until a sound broke the silence. A door creaked open further down the hallway. It was the same door to the room with the yearbook. Slowly, we turned, our flashlights illuminating the doorway. The desk was still there, the yearbook still closed. But something else had changed. The chair, which had been empty before, was now pulled out slightly, as if someone had just stood up from it. That was enough for us. We ran, moving as fast as we could toward the stairs. We didn't stop, didn't look back. We didn't care if Daniel was trying to prank us. Something was wrong with that building. By the time we reached the parking lot, we were breathless, our hearts pounding. But just as we were about to get in our cars, a shadow appeared at the entrance of the school. Daniel. He was standing there, his clothes covered in dust, his eyes vacant. He looked like he had been somewhere else entirely. We rushed toward him, asking him where he had been, what had happened. He wouldn't answer. He just stood there, shaking his head. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I was there for years, but you left me." The words sent a chill through my entire body. It was impossible. He had only been missing for 20 minutes. Daniel never explained what happened. He stopped talking to us completely after that night. A week later, he was gone again, this time permanently. His family reported him missing, but no trace of him was ever found. The school demolished the old science building a few months later, but even now I can't shake the feeling that Daniel never really left that place. And that somewhere, in a darkened room that no longer exists, there's still a yearbook with names that don't belong.